Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Summer Survey Field Report. I am joined by some very special guests. Sitting right next to me is Abe. Do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, I'm Abraham Cans. I'm the new Director of Conservation Research here at the Crane Trust, and joining you here tonight to just chat about who I am and kind of introduce myself to everyone on virtual.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm the Sounders Conservation Fellow this year.
Hi, I'm Emma Richards. I'm the Lilo Wilson Biological Monitoring Fellow.
Hi, I'm Matt Urbanski. I'm the Special Projects Assistant.
And my name is Kylie Warren, and I'm so grateful to you all for joining us. Please introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. We're very curious about you all. Thanks again for being here tonight, and we're going to kick off here in just a few moments with Abe Cans and a land acknowledgement. Thanks again. As we get started, I wanted to share a view of our plover pond just because the sun is lighting it up so beautifully right now. And I also want to welcome you all and thank you, especially to those of you who are Crane Trust members, for supporting the Crane Trust here. We could not do this work without you. We really greatly appreciate your support and your participation. And finally, as we get started, I also want to acknowledge that we are in the homelands of the Pawnee, the Oceti-Sakowin Sioux people. These are the native people who were here before us. And our regional work also involves the past, present, and future lands of the Ponca, Omaha, Cheyenne, Lakota, Arapaho, Dakota, Ka, Iowa, Ho-Chunk, and Sauk and Fox people. As land-based conservation organization, we acknowledge that Indigenous peoples have a vast and unique history here, have stewarded this land for generations, and continue to live and thrive here. Conservation organizations like the Crane Trust must work to maintain healthy habitats, wildlife, and all people. We offer our respect to these cultures and these Indigenous people, and for the example they set to us for the care of the land and for generations to come. And with that, I would like to share some footage of birds. This is a year of birds at the Crane Trust. And while we show this footage, we will be showing a brief clip of what was here before our summer. And we will conclude with that as well. But in the middle will be all of our summer songbirds and grassland birds. And we will talk to Abe Cans about who he is and what he does here at the Crane Trust.
The Crane Trust cares about whooping cranes and sandhill cranes, of course, Crane Trust. But part of our mission is also focused on migratory birds. And so that includes birds that migrate through, like sandhill cranes and whooping cranes, but also the birds that migrate to us to breed and raise their chicks and then move on. A lot of that bird community is actually grassland birds, which are some of the fastest declining species in the US, especially bobolinks and our Henslow's sparrows. There's been over 250 different species of birds on the property. That diversity is pretty impressive, but also when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So we're kind of in this like ecoregion where the west meets the east. So birds that are in the east, they have habitat that's suitable for them here. And then birds that are in the west, there's also habitat that's suitable for them around the Crane Trust. And then the same thing with north and south. We're the southern edge of the north, and we're the northern edge of the south. And so there's this intersection of all these like ecoregions that happens right here in the Central Platte Valley. It just makes it a much more unique and valuable landscape that I'm really proud to protect. Our primary goals for our avian surveys is to monitor the populations of birds. We do 15-minute point count surveys at all of our monitoring plots throughout our property, which requires us to listen and look for all the bird species that we can see and hear. That includes keeping track of the relative abundance of each species and then the overall diversity of birds at each location. Doing these bird surveys will help us know how to manage the land better in order to help these breeding bird populations and the migrating bird populations. We take a lot of pride in the quality of data that we collect. There's a bias that everybody has. Some people are better at hearing birds or different species or seeing other species compared to other people, and we just keep track of who's doing the survey, and then we can kind of do a bias calculation when we go into analyze all the data. Then we also have a QA/QC time where we quality check all of the data that we entered, make sure that it matches up with the data that we wrote down in the field, that our database shows exactly what was written down or what was intended to be there. Just the diversity that you can get and the populations that you can see here really kind of just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that in Nebraska, of all places, there was this kind of diversity, all these unique birds around, and it makes me excited that I can actually be a part of making a difference for them and making a difference for a lot of different species all at once.
Thank you so much to Matt Urbanski for creating that. And I really appreciate all the hard work that goes into our content at Crane Trust. But right now, I want to introduce Dr. Abraham Cans. Abe, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening, and thank you, Kylie, for helping put this together.
And Abe, can you just tell us a little bit about your past and how you came about to Crane Trust as we watch a year of birds here?
Yeah, definitely. So, I kind of started into ecology during my undergraduate work at the University of South Dakota in Vermillion, South Dakota, where I followed up with a master's program there. Eventually, I ended up doing my PhD at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And during my PhD, for my work, I was actually partnered with the Crane Trust, collecting information on wet meadow habitat, a kind of wetlands that we have here. And so that relationship, worked out really well, and we were able to really foster that relationship. And once I got my PhD, the position of Director of Conservation Research was open, and I was able to apply and got the position now. And I'm really excited to be here, happy to be part of the science team officially now, and to get to know all the staff here better.
And then do you have any big visions or plans for the long-term monitoring or any conservation work here at the Crane Trust?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of projects that I would like to kind of personally implement. So one of the things I focused on during both my master's and my PhD was invertebrate communities. So looking at insects and earthworms and how they can be used to not only determine the quality of a habitat, but also looking at their use as essentially a resource for things like cranes that come through the area, and using them to also determine how good the habitat is for those particular species. And so I want to continue some of that work, looking at invertebrate communities in the area, which is work that the Crane Trust has done previously, but more recently hasn't done. On top of that, There's some hydrologic work I'd like to do. And in general, I think it'd be really cool if we could streamline a lot of what we have going on here for our science team, and make it more modern and up to date in terms of our ability to implement newer technologies into our science program.
Thank you, Abe, so much for being here tonight. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Oh, nothing in particular other than I'm just, really excited to be here. It's been great in the couple months. I started June 3rd, so I've only been here for, what did that put us, 3 months now? Over 3 months, I guess. I'm actually creeping in on 4. But point being, still relatively new here, and it's still great to just help out with all of these surveys that the Crane Trust does, and getting acquainted with everyone here, and really getting into collecting data to help the Platte River, to help cranes, and to help maintain the land that the Crane Trust is in charge of around here.
Thank you so much, Abe. We greatly appreciate you being here. Dr. Abraham Cans, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from him. Hopefully during crane season you'll jump on, and then who knows, maybe during a field report on whooping cranes later, huh?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll plan to talk to everyone then.
Awesome. Well, we just watched his beautiful work, Matt Urbanski, and he is next up in the hot seat. I wanted to just ask him a question or two about what it was like creating short documentaries on the surveys we've been doing, particularly the one we just watched on birds.
Oh yeah. Hi, Matt Urbanski here again. But I think the documentary filmmaking stuff is hard work, but pretty fun. I got to follow around Bethany, who is our wildlife biologist here at the Crane Trust, along with the fellows most of the mornings I went out. And basically, while they're counting all the birds, identifying all the birds, I just get to tinker around with my camera, have fun. It's hard work, don't get me wrong, but it's also fun work. So I'll take my camera around, get as many shots as I can that I think will be useful for this type of thing, and go from there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is hard work. It's fun to work with you, Matt. I'm so appreciative. This year, Matt's content has started to make its way into the virtual program, so you've got 2 of us now, and Matt's work is beautiful, and he brings a fresh, young vision to the social media as well, and we're all very grateful to the very hard work you've done and the beautiful shots you've collected, and it's nice to have 2 cameras on the scene. So just so our audience is aware, some of the survey footage that we're about to embark into will feature footage from the both of us. Matt was involved in the survey on fish seining, which we'll see later in the evening, and there's some clips here and there of his work. So Matt, thank you so much for always being here and supporting virtual, and hopefully we'll get a chance to jump in and have you talk a little bit later, but we wanted to just say thank you so much, and thank you for that beautiful footage on the bird documentary.
Of course, yeah. Thank you too, Kylie. I've learned a lot from you. It's been great working with you. Appreciate it.
I've learned a lot from you, so there you go. All right, we're going to take a very quick break as we switch into our next segment on vegetation surveys, and I'm going to get our fellows in the hot seat. Please stay with us. Yes, we have whooping cranes on the screen, but we are going to depart from them as they will be featured later and transfer into our vegetation survey. And I am here with a fellow. Would you like to introduce yourself again?
Hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm this year's Sounders Conservation Fellow.
And Eleanor has been a big part of our summer surveys. Eleanor, can you explain a little bit about what this fellowship is that you have?
Yeah, basically, as a fellow, I help the science team out with doing all of the summer surveys here, and during the winter, we help with creating publications and helping out during crane season, of course. Yeah.
And this, just to be clear, the documentary we're about to watch is actually Emma and Josh, so you will get to hear Emma's voice here in a minute. But what we're seeing is a vegetation survey. And Eleanor, how does one conduct a vegetation survey? Can you just take us through the steps?
Yeah, so first of all, we lie out a 100-meter transect between 2 points that we have set GPS, which are standard points, so we can come back to the exact same location year after year and watch the change through time. Then we do 2 different types of surveys. We do a point transect survey where every 2 meters or so we stop and just write down what the dominant vegetation is there. And then we do quadrat surveys where every 10 meters we put down a 1 by 1.5 quadrat, and then write down all of the plants that are in there and their relative abundance. We kind of round to the nearest 5%.
That sounds like a lot of plants.
Yes.
How many plant species do you normally go through on one of these surveys, or do you have any idea? Or does it vary?
It varies a lot depending on like the site. Sometimes we will go through like a little wetland and start an upland and go through a wetland. Sometimes the topography stays the same. Plant species depends a lot on hydrology. So if there's variation in elevation, that changes the hydrology and changes the plant community. It can be anywhere from like 25 to like over 100. It really depends. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then do you have any favorite plants?
My favorite plant species has got to be bergamot. It was one of the first plants I learned how to ID without a flower blooming, and it just smells really nice and has a very beautiful flower.
Oh, I love bergamot. I like it in tea.
Yeah.
Have you had the Earl Grey bergamot tea? Is really quite lovely. But in addition to plants, we also survey birds, and you've had a chance to go on a number of bird surveys, correct?
Yeah, I've done a lot of those.
And then, do you have? How do you conduct a bird survey?
Again, we go out to points that we have located on a GPS, so we return to the same exact spot year after year, and then we stand in the field for 15 minutes and listen to and look for what birds are there, and we try to count every single bird that we hear and see. It can be sometimes difficult not to double count birds, but you get there.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, do you have a favorite bird?
I'm going to say the bobwhite. It's much harder for me to pick a favorite bird, but bobwhites are just really cute and they're silly, so I love them.
I like the bobwhite. Bobwhite? Yeah, they're fun. They're definitely fun. And if anybody in our audience comes to Crane Trust in the summer, you will hear that iconic bobwhite call. Do you have any funny stories that you would like to share about either one of these surveys? Is there something that happened in the field, maybe a fun anecdote or anything like that?
I think the first story that comes to mind is when me and Bethany went out for a bird survey. We parked the truck and there was a bunch of cows. We have cows all over the Crane Trust that we use for grazing management. So the cows were really scared of us at first. We got out of the truck and we walked to the survey spot. And as we're surveying, I turn around and the cows are just like surrounding the truck. And we're like, weird, they must really like the truck. And then we noticed that they're licking the truck. So I don't know if they just have a salt deficiency or just really like the truck. And then later I was talking to our range manager, Josh, and he was telling me that apparently those cows are notorious for licking trucks. And I was trying to tell him this story, and he's like, "What? The cows were licking the truck, right?" And I was like, "How did you know?" That was fun.
That is funny. It's really important, the grazers that we have here at Crane Trust, and they are very, they're ecosystem engineers. And so we have cows and we have bison. And so it's fun to hear stories about encounters with either. That is a funny story. I don't think I would lick a truck. Would you?
No,
me neither. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for describing the veg survey. In this footage, we see Josh and Emma wrapping up the survey, and we're going to get wrapped up with this segment and bring you another short video from Matt Urbanski on small mammals. So we'll cue that up real quick, and please stay with us if you have any questions Please ask away. I want to thank Kim and Kat for introducing themselves, as well as Matt Fong. Thank you all for being here with us tonight.
Our small mammal population is made up of about 10 different species. This includes our meadow jumping mouse, our deer mice, white-footed mouse, plains pocket
Head
mouse.
and body
We
is
also
less
have
than 80
meadow and prairie
millimeters in length.
voles. We have a few different types of shrews, which aren't rodents, but they're still small mammals.
It's always fun with the shrews. Like when you hold them, you can feel their warmth.
They're kind of one of the first indicators of a change on the landscape, whether that be climate changes, changes in disturbance, so if there was a flood or a fire or shifts in grazing patterns, those populations respond rather quickly. They provide a significant food source for, our raptors and even sandhill cranes and whooping cranes. We set out 50 Sherman box traps along a transect line at 14 of our monitoring points year after year. When vegetation is seeding out, we'll set them out late in the evening and then check them early in the morning before it gets too hot. When we check the traps, we'll ID whatever we catch, we'll let them go. We'll close all the traps so we don't catch anything accidentally throughout the day, and then we'll come back in the evening and reopen them, and we'll do that for 3 nights. That data is compiled into giving us the community data that we can use in either management decisions or publications, etc. Keeping track of the small mammal community will help us better serve not only them, but the greater ecosystem.
So once again, thanks to Matt Urbanski for putting that beautiful footage together. We had a question in the audience. Is this the right place for monarchs? We will be getting to the monarchs. So please bear with us. We are going to talk a little bit. I've got Emma with me here. Emma, would you mind introducing yourself again? We're going to talk a little bit about the small mammal surveys, and Emma, take it away.
Hi, my name is Emma. Again, I'm the Lilo Wilson Biological Monitoring Fellow, and happy to be here and share some info on what we've been doing this summer.
Excellent. And what is the Lilo Wilson Fellowship? How is that different from the Saunders Fellow?
Pretty much Eleanor and I are doing the same amount of stuff, same surveys, same kind of things, trying to help out with our science team. We basically just do whatever we need to do to help the Crane Trust get their long-term monitoring stuff completed, and just keep building the data for it. So not
right now, one.
much of a difference between what Eleanor and I do. We kind of tag team and really knock out.
There's a little latch inside that
And what we're watching right now is some volunteer drone footage
Cool.
of an overview of a small mammal survey where the team is setting out traps the night before they collect the animals. Emma, can you just walk us through a little bit of how these surveys go?
Yeah, so for small mammals, we actually do a 200-meter transect. So that's where you can see Abe is rolling up the tape and everything, because we have 2 of those. And we will place the traps every 5 meters along the line, just so we can set out it'll end up being 50 traps. And we'll set them and put some of our seed mix and bait mix in it, and be ready to look for the mammals come the next morning. And we usually do that just a couple hours before sunset.
And so when you catch the mammals, you put them delicately in these little bags. Can you just walk us through what happens in the morning when you catch them?
Yeah, so I know it looks a little scary. It's a Ziploc bag, but this way it ensures for the health of the mammal and for us. And basically we'll walk the trap line and see if the doors on both sides of the trap are closed. If they are, we will double check to make sure there's an animal in. Sometimes traps are sensitive, but if we do find an animal, we will slowly and softly drop them into the Ziploc bags so then we can do further identification and really mark what is here and present in these different areas.
And what's some of the coolest mammals that you've found on one of these surveys?
So the coolest one, I think, was we found a Plains pocket mouse. So it's a really, really tiny little mammal, super adorable. I think we spent longer trying to figure what it was because it's not typical to be found here, but it can. But he was super adorable and absolutely just loved getting to see the little guy.
That's so cool. Were there any particular challenges you faced while carrying out these small mammal surveys?
Probably our biggest challenge is some of our transects go in the bison pasture as well as some are in with where the cows are grazing. So thankfully we were able to work with our land management team so we didn't have issues with bison because these traps are not very durable and super strong, so they can get squished easily. And we did have one instance where we had a couple smushed traps, but it was before there was anything in the trap line. It was just an over the weekend kind of thing where we had them closed. So that was probably our biggest issue.
And then do you have any fun stories from the field carrying out one of these small mammal surveys? Anything you'd like to share?
So very early on when we were doing like one of our first trap lines out here on the Shoemaker Island, we ended up getting to a trap. It was closed and I was hearing noise come from it, and you typically don't hear that. And we figured out there ended up being two male voles that ended up in the same trap, and Bethany has never had that happen before, so that was cool. And we ended up actually having that happen again where we ended up with two female voles in the same trap. But the ladies were nice, the guys were kind of fighting and ready to get out of the same area.
It's kind of like having a roommate during COVID lockup.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It was just this fun footage of the mouse, and we have voles as well as shrews. And when I went out with you, I think on this morning we had, were they shrews or were they voles?
I think we had a combo of the two.
And we don't actually put the shrews or the voles in the plastic sack. We just release them, correct?
The shrews we will release. For the most part, we're able to identify those pretty quickly compared to any of the mice. But it also is for the sake of us not having to smell them later on.
Yeah, smell is always very important to remember. Well, thank you so much. We're just going to watch a little bit more of this footage, and then I'm going to queue up another video on one of our surveys, once again by Matt Urbanski. This one is all about the underwater world of the sloughs here at Crane Trust. We do have aqua life that lives in the water as well, and we go fish seining. So that'll be our next section that we'll discuss. And thank you so much, Emma, for joining us and discussing all about our mammal surveys.
Amongst the science team staff, the slough sampling is referred to as Fishy Fridays. We will seine, essentially dragging this net through the water at different portions of the slough and collect the small fish that occur there, and then ID all those fish, take abundance measurements for them, just in order to get a sense of the fish community. But in addition to that fish seining data, in each of these sloughs we'll collect things like dissolved oxygen content to determine the quality of the water, turbidity measurements. We will also take macroinvertebrate samples, specifically samples from the benthos or the bottom of the slough. So we'll actually try to pull out a nice bit of muck, and we will rinse through that and look at the invertebrates there. It has been shown by a lot of other research that invertebrates, key taxa such as mayflies, caddisflies, and odonata, your dragonflies and damselflies, can be really good bioindicators for the quality of slough wetland sites. These slough wetlands in particular can be important to prevent flooding. They also take part in nutrient processing and cycling. They can actually remove a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus from water. So wetlands in general in some ways serve as kind of kidneys for the environment. And so we want to make sure those kidneys are functioning well. These slough wetlands are really important to the cranes themselves. Warm water or open water sloughs can actually serve as foraging areas for the cranes. So cranes may go to these slough wetlands and pick out things like some of the fish that are in there or the invertebrates, so it's a good place to forage. And while cranes will get a majority of their diet in terms of volume from cornfields, these slough wetlands really provide other nutrients that you maybe can't get from the corn that you're eating out of the cornfield. Instead, they get it from these wetlands. So they're really important to allowing for that migration to happen. Management of these slough wetlands is also critical to the whole habitat approach the crane trust takes in trying to ensure biological integrity throughout this whole region. In general, the slough wetlands are just a key habitat type in this area, and they're very unique. At the same time, they're a very threatened habitat due to shifts in the hydrology in the region, and so we want to make sure that we are maintaining it well, managing the land surrounding it well in a way that leads to healthy slough habitat.
Welcome to Underneath a Slough. And with me is Eleanor. She has come back to talk to us all about our fish seining, or as we like to call it, Fishy Fridays. Thank you, Eleanor, for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Super excited.
All right. Well, we did see that little the preview, but Eleanor, what is fish seining, and why is fish seining important?
So fish seining is essentially using a seine net, which is the net you see us use in the video, where you have two people and basically a long stick in between it, and you run the seine through the water and filter out the fish that are in it. It's important because it's really our only way to survey for fish. There are other methods you can use too, but unlike birds or even frogs, where you can like listen to them or just observe them on the landscape, we can't see fish without like physically catching them. So seining is really important, and it's a good way to get like a representative sample of the fish that are there.
It's certainly fun to get in those sloughs and slip around a bit. What are some of the challenges you faced while seining for fish, other than slipping around in the sloughs and maybe dropping equipment in the water?
I think the sloughs themselves make for interesting environments to work in. We worked out of two sloughs this year. We worked in what we call calving pasture slough and big slough. And I think calving pasture was way more mucky, so we would frequently get stuck in there. The weather was also interesting. In years past, a lot of people would just go to Fishy Fridays in sandals and shorts. This year, a lot more people decided to wear waders because it was cold and gross. So, having the waders is nice to protect you from the outside environment.
And I just wanted to let our audience know that drone shot was of Big Slough. So this is, I believe, also Big Slough. I could be wrong, but they're both, it's a very interesting habitat, and it is very fun, as we will see in this footage, when you pull up a sample of fish without a huge amount of vegetation. What have you learned from doing fish seining surveys here at Crane Trust?
I think I've learned a lot more about how the aquatic places are structured, and I've also learned about how hard it is to actually catch fish in the seine net. If you don't have the weights basically perfectly balanced, you won't catch a lot. If you have it too close to the bottom, you will pick up a bunch of vegetation, which makes it impossible to look through for the fish. If you have it too high up, the fish just go under your net and you don't catch any. I also learned that we have a lot of mosquito fish here, which is kind of sad, but yeah.
Well, why is that sad? Can you explain to us?
Western mosquito fish are an invasive species, and this year we found a lot more than we have in years past, and we found a lot less species diversity, so that is cause for concern.
That is a concern, yeah. Invasives are never fun to find in our waters here at Crane Trust. But getting in the water is fun. Do you have any funny stories other than that time I fell with my camera? Do you have any? That was pretty bad.
I gotta say, I think the most exciting part was anytime Emma found a bullfrog tadpole. I really hated the bullfrog tadpoles because number one, bullfrogs are invasive species, so I hated them for existing. And number two, they had the texture of Jello, and every time I touched them, I felt like they were gonna dissolve in my hand or something. But Emma was obsessed. Emma was like, "Oh my god, another squishy!" And
There
had
they
to
are.
hold all of them. So that was really fun.
There's our tadpoles. Yes, and then what about the invertebrates? Because there are a lot of invertebrates that get surveyed on this. Do you know much about that?
I know a little bit about the invertebrates. They're lots of fun. I love bugs. And when I was in high school, part of one of my hobbies was to use invertebrates and sample for invertebrates to determine water quality. So that's why we sample for them. Some invertebrates require higher dissolved oxygen content, so you can use which invertebrate communities are there as a proximity for how healthy your water system is.
Yeah. Thanks for all of that wonderful information. Had you done fish seining before Crane Trust at all?
Yeah, in one of my classes in college, we did a couple of different fish seinings up in Minnesota.
Oh, wow. That would have been colder than here, or no?
It was actually warmer because we did
Wow.
it in May. But
Interesting.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Well, thank you so much again for speaking with us on fish seining and about your fellowship and about your experience before Crane Trust.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, we're going to watch a little bit more of this footage, and then we're going to move on to the pollinators section, which will also include a look at our butterflies. Please stand by. Will Locke, thanks for the kind words, and if you have not introduced yourselves in the comments, I'm inviting you to do so now. We are so grateful that you're here supporting the Crane Trust and our mission, and we hope you enjoy these last few clips this evening. This is our team packing up the fish seining survey, and again, another volunteer drone shot from the slough. And I've got Emma in the hot seat one last time. We're going to move on to pollinators. Grasslands are very important to pollinators, so just kind of wanted to use this footage as a segue into our discussion of pollinators. And as I transfer the footage here, I believe Emma has a unique history of work with pollinators. Emma, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of my first jobs in the natural resource field actually ended up being working with bumblebees. So it kind of is a niche of mine, I guess, to be able to ID them and everything. And it's something that I like to keep bringing up in my work, and was really excited to be able to do some bumblebee surveys out here in Nebraska, because they're much different from where I was surveying to start off with.
And bumblebees, we've seen them a lot on flowering plants this year.
Yes.
And in addition to butterflies and bumblebees, it's true that other insects also pollinate plants, correct?
Correct, yes.
And one of the things we got to do here at Crane Trust was survey and tag butterflies. And Emma, you were instrumental in this. Could you talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, so with monarch tagging, we are actually going out and collecting monarchs, so we're netting them with safe nets for them, of course. And after that, we will safely get them out of the net and put a sticker that we have from the Monarch Watch, and we just basically ID it, and we get that recorded, and then we make sure we understand if it was a male or female, which can be a little tricky. It's just a small little dot on the back of the male's wing that says it's a male. But other than that, it's been fun. The first day we went out, we got a little bit of our exercise in for the day. We were running around for about an hour and a half trying to chase down these guys, and it was fun and really glad that we were able to catch a lot.
And we did this. Here's some footage of the running right now. It is kind of, it reminds me of a cartoon.
Yes.
Chasing the butterfly.
Yes.
And we did this this was last week along a woodland just north of the Central Platte. And how did you find this experience? Was it fun? Was it exhausting? What was your thought?
I would definitely say both. Definitely was a ton of fun because once you finally got one, it was awesome, and we can mark it and basically help add to any kind of data that the Monarch Watch will be collecting from it, and basically getting to track the monarchs. I will say it was tiring because we were running all around trying to catch the monarchs, and they are much faster than you think, and we were high-stepping it through the prairie trying to get these guys. So after a little bit, you definitely had to take a break.
And you are going to see some footage of the team tagging the monarchs here in a minute. But can you explain the difference between this activity and a butterfly survey?
Yeah, so in this one, we're physically going to be handling the butterflies as we're trying to catch them so then we can apply a tag on. During our actual butterfly surveys, we will be looking for both monarchs and then also the regal fritillaries. They're both species of concern that Nebraska Game and Parks would really like different organizations to keep a check on and, just monitor it. But on those, we walk a 200-meter transect and basically follow our GPS on this transect. And it's 15 minutes long. We have somebody who's holding the GPS, somebody recording, and we're both having binos on, or binoculars, so that we can spot any butterflies that might be close, off the line, or just in the area, as well as incidentals, because any data is very important to collect.
And earlier in this segment, there was footage of a milkweed, a showy milkweed with a regal fritillary on it. So if you want to go back to that and see what a regal fritillary looks like and how it differs from a monarch, feel free to do so. But the butterfly tagging through Monarch Watch also involves this app. I just saw a clip of someone using. How does that work?
Yeah, so in the app, it's just a faster, easier way that streamlines the data right back to the Monarch Watch. So all we're doing is recording where we caught them, if it's male or female, and then writing down the tag number because each tag number is unique, and it just helps further with the tracking of how far the monarchs flew to get to certain areas.
And that is fascinating because last year I was in Mexico, and we're going to see a clip of this in a minute. Actually, it was this past January, and I saw a monarch with one of those Monarch Watch tags on it. Can you explain why this tagging effort is important for the monarchs?
Yeah, so monarch butterflies have been experiencing a decline in their populations. And it's something that's trying to be monitored through Monarch Watch is a great one, but a lot of different natural resource management people in the field are definitely paying attention and trying to do their best to help support population numbers. So tagging just allows the Monarch Watch and our scientists to kind of get a better idea of how far they're traveling. Maybe if there's like a certain area where they're stopping over and they see there isn't as much food or anything that they might need to continue their travels, it just kind of gives us a better idea on where we could focus some more management and what would be helpful to hopefully help the population grow.
There's that Mexico footage. Can you guys see the tag in that footage? I just circled it for y'all. So yes, monarchs. Thank you, Emma, for talking monarchs with us. Now we're going to talk a little bit about bumblebees. As the footage will come in, we have just a really short section on bees, but can you tell us a little bit about the bee surveys and what's so special about the Southern Plains bumblebee?
Yeah, so bumblebees here at Crane Trust is something they have done a couple years past, but I kind of brought it back because it's something I'm looking into researching more. And bumblebees here are really great to get an idea of what species are present. And two of the main ones that we were really looking for in our surveys were the Southern Plains bumblebee and then the American bumblebee. And I'm very happy to say we found both, and we found males and females of both, so that means there is a good population, or there at least is something where the population can continue. the following year. Southern plain ones are very important in the fact, or more noticeable, because they are actually up for listing under the Endangered Species Act. There's a petition to put them on it in July of 2022, and as of January 2024 of this year, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually stated that they're looking further into that petition to hopefully list the Southern Plains bumblebee. Bumblebees in general are great pollinators for crops and your flowers and just anything you could think of. They're generalists. They're not too picky about what they will use for nectar and for pollen. And they just really are impactful, and we're noticing a lot of declines. We already have the rusty patch bumblebee listed, and so Southern is noticing about a 42% decline in populations, and they used to be found in 26 states, and now their abundance has dropped, and they have dropped 6 states that they can be found in. So just again, conservation efforts and trying to help these guys because they help us in the long run.
Thank you so much. Do you see bumblebees in your future?
Oh yeah, love 'em.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emma. And thanks to both Emma and Eleanor for joining us tonight. We're going to move on with our last segment, which is about the monarchs here and there. So thank you to both. And we'll show that clip of monarchs, and then we're going to conclude for the evening. We appreciate you all. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, Glenn, Russ, Christy, Bill and Larissa, Kim, and thank you all for the kind words. We will be back with more butterflies. So as mentioned, butterflies here at Crane Trust are prolific, particularly just last week, this time of year. And this butterfly that we're looking at is tagged with a very special tag from Monarch Watch. And as we see these butterflies, we see them on it's called a prairie sage pitcher plant. And monarchs like to also roost in evergreen trees. So on this moonlit night, I went out and watched them roosting. And when they wake up in the morning, they have to warm themselves up because they rely on their thermal body temperature to help their metabolisms, and this is what allows them to propel themselves in the air. And these monarchs sunning themselves on this moss, as you've probably guessed, this is not footage from Crane Trust. This footage is in Mexico. And last January, I had the opportunity to hike to this location at 12,000 feet and see these monarchs in the trees. And unfortunately, monarchs are, like cranes, an animal or a creature in crisis. They've seen sharp population decline. They've gone from 7.5 acres to my arrival at the Crane Trust was about 2 years ago, down to 2.1. And we know how they measure, the way they measure the acreage is using the trees. So in Mexico, they'll count how many trees the monarchs is, and it's so many trees per acre, and that is how they can determine how they're doing, how this population is doing. So we don't know how they're doing this year. However, we should know once they make their way back to Mexico. And the generation that Crane Trust is tagging is the 4th generation. It takes monarchs 4 generations to migrate. And this 4th generation is the one that takes the longest haul. They go from the northern parts of the country, Nebraska, all the way down to these high mountains in Mexico, where they cluster, once again, loving to roost in those evergreen trees, as we saw them earlier at Crane Trust. We're showing this connection between Mexico and the Crane Trust because it shows that the work we do here at Crane Trust is forever impactful, not just here, but also around the world. Those tags that you can see in this imagery that we put on here at Crane Trust can end up in Mexico. This butterfly that we're seeing in this image is not a Crane Trust butterfly because we did not tag it last year. However, it is the same project that we're involved with, and maybe next year I'll be so lucky to see one of the 25 butterflies that we've tagged this year. You just never know. But the work we do here impacts wherever these animals go, to include butterflies, cranes, migratory geese, other migratory songbirds, what we looked at earlier tonight. And it is very important that we maintain and protect this habitat for all these wonderful species for generations to come and for the world abroad. If you wish to help butterflies, I encourage you to check out Monarch Watch. Thank you. You can also check out Joint Monarch Venture, and you can also plant pollinators in your gardens. Thanks for watching that segment. We are going to go back to our beautiful sunset as we close out the program tonight. And there is the last of the light leaving the Platte River. I'm going to look in our comments for any questions that may have been missed. And as we just enjoy this beautiful sunset, Emma and Eleanor are still here with me. Would you like to add anything tonight? They wish us all a good evening, and I wish you all a good evening. And I want to thank you again for joining us, and thanks to our fellows and our fellow content producer, Matt Urbanski, for producing this wonderful content together as a group effort. If you are a member of the Crane Trust, please know that we will have more virtual programs for you this year. In November, our fellows will once again join us for our Whooping Crane Recap Fall Field Survey Report. We will look at whooping cranes, sandhill cranes, and others of our fall migration. We hope you join us then. That program is currently scheduled for November 21st. If you are not yet a member of Crane Trust, I encourage you to join. Membership has many benefits, to include free access to all of our virtual programming during crane season and beyond. And finally, I want to pay a special thanks to you all. We certainly appreciate and rely on your support so that we can continue to protect and maintain the physical, hydrological, and biological integrity of the Big Bend area of the Platte River. As we've seen tonight, it is a valuable ecosystem to so many wonderful species, to include prairie pocket mice, southern plains bumblebees, killdeer, bobolinks, bobwhites, sandhill cranes, whooping cranes, all kinds of fuzzy mammals, all kinds of fish and invertebrates, and of course our beautiful monarch butterfly pollinators. Once again, we will be back on the 21st of November, and I encourage you all to follow our social media and participate in Crane Trust activities until then. We look forward to seeing you online, and I wish you all a very good evening. Have a wonderful night.